Merita siya to?
These valves at the top rotate, they let the air in, pushing the piston this way. When the piston gets to this end of the cylinder, that valve opens, letting the air out. It goes under the floor, we don't hear it. Then this valve opens and pushes the piston back the other way. So back and forth it goes. The piston is this big around. It goes for a 5-foot stroke. The big wheel would be turning at about 75 revolutions a minute, where this engine running a factory in Providence, Rhode Island, like it did in 1859. This engine would be making about 300 horsepower. Right now we're running it at about 1/10 the speed. What you're looking at is a historic treasure. This, when it was made, was the finest steam engine, the best technology in the whole world. Made in America, in Rhode Island. All of these engines made by George Corliss back in those days have gone to the scrapyard, save for this one. Henry Ford rescued this one and put it right here in 1929. It's been sitting right here for a very long time. He wanted to create a place where you could learn about the history of the steam engine and see the very finest state-of-the-art in steam technology as time progressed. Now today we still use a lot of steam. It is a part of our lives. Can anybody tell me where this steam is used?
Saunas. Concentrated solar, nuclear,
That's the power source to create the steam. What does the steam do for us?
Turns turbines to make electricity.
Makes electricity.
Or it runs factories.
Yeah. So steam engines have not gone obsolete. The technology has changed. This one is of the type that powered the Industrial Revolution in the mid to late 19th century. This powered our factories. This was running a factory in the 1860s. This probably made parts for the Civil War. This was created by a fellow named George Corliss. George Corliss was a store clerk. He was pretty good at math. But as it turned out, he was a natural-born mechanic. He was a mechanical genius. All of this design was in his head. This came from George Corliss. Fortunately, in addition to being a mechanical genius, he is also a business genius. If you create the finest technology in the world and you invent the best steam engine that's ever been invented, and you don't know how to sell it, no good. So can you think of any other people in our history that were really good genius scientists and engineers that also were business geniuses?
Edison. He just stole other people's inventions.
Who?
Edison.
Edison!
He was a businessman.
Sure he was. He was shrewd.
Yep. He just couldn't invent worth much. He just kept stealing things. Very good at that. He was a genius at that.
Somehow he managed to amass 1,400 patents.
Yeah.
Yep.
I have one patent. I wouldn't want to pay for 1,400 of them.
The only body made any money off of yours is the lawyer, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So, what we have here is a real treasure. This is all about powering our factories. Now, how did it do that? I want you to imagine there's a leather belt on this wheel. That is a huge leather belt.
It's a big cow.
That's a lot of cows.
This is one big cow.
Yeah. Yeah. And that leather belt goes way up near the ceiling where there would be a wheel about yay big. And so that little wheel is turning very rapidly. And it's rapidly spinning a shaft that goes out into your factory. And everywhere in your factory that you need power, there's a leather belt dropping down from that line shaft around your machine tool. You tighten the belt, your machine tool runs. So before the age of electricity and electrical machines, power was distributed with line shafts and leather belts. There's a nice scale model of a belt-driven factory right behind our Corliss engine here. And on the scale model, the steam engine's flywheel is 2 feet in diameter. All you have to do is scale that up to 24 feet and you get the idea. This is not, by the way, this is a big one, but this is not the largest Corliss ever made. He made one for the Philadelphia Centennial Exhibition, 1876, 100-year anniversary of our birth. He made one to power that whole exhibit hall. The flywheel on that one was a third again bigger. It was 32 feet in diameter. That flywheel weighed 56 tons. If you Google Corliss engine, that's the first thing that comes up, the Philadelphia Exposition. Now that engine did not survive. After the World's Fair, a fellow named Pullman bought it for his factory in Chicago. He made rail cars and things. And it served him well for many, many years. And then when it was reached the end of its useful life, they scrapped it. Who has space and the resources to keep around an engine of that size? It's worth a lot of money as scrap. That's what happened to most of these. But Henry Ford grew up in the age of steam. He was born in 1863, and the first high-tech things he saw were steam engines. And he intuitively knew how they worked, because he was a genius, and started thinking about how to make them work better. At age 16, he was the local representative for a steam engine company, maintaining their engines in the field. Modified to run on air? No, not really. Not really. You just need to get some force in that. The air will do it. The steam does it by expanding. The air is just cooking. Yeah. The air isn't compressed much. We're using 5 pounds per square inch. But we need to supply a lot of it.
What scale is this? Like, what is the speed versus what do we run in the factory?
Oh, we're running at 1/10 the rated speed. If we were running at rated speed, all of this would just be a blur. You wouldn't see it.
If you put it up to full throttle and then shut it off, how long would this thing spin for?
A long time.
What's the fastest you guys had it run up here in the museum?
Well, this is as fast as we run it because this is all the air we can get our hands on. We bought a great big blower. And to buy any more, we'd have to have our own power station, I think.
You maybe need a huffer like they use for the jet engines.
Yeah, we would need something really
I don't
awesome.
even think that would do it.
What's your CFM that you got going now?
1500.
Woo! Well, you figure what is like 2-foot diameter bore on that thing?
Yeah. There's a lot of volume there. But you know pi r squared. Pi are not round.
Right.
Pi r squared is going to give you the number of square inches in a 2-foot diameter circle, and we got 5 pounds on each one of those rascals. You do the math, it comes out to just about a ton of force. And that's what it takes to get this thing moving. And I do my best to keep from saying big wheel, keep on turning. You know,
This one take a manual kickstart or is it just goes?
Kick.
It-
That'd be a little big kick.
it just goes. We leave the crank at the top of the stroke, right about there.
Yeah.
Because that crank itself probably weighs a couple of tons, and if it were at the bottom, it actually wants to fall. We don't have enough force to pick it up, so we would be hard pressed to start it. We do have a backup system. It's an electric motor that's geared way down, several hundred to one, and we can turn that 20-ton flywheel with the motor. We can get 3 revolutions per hour.
Can you turn that wheel by hand?
You can try. Well, they did in the old days. In the 19th century, they would have legions of these scruffy young men that were all covered in grease. They were called grease monkeys, and it was their job to get dirty and to do whatever was required. The engineer, he has females. He's the guy with the smarts. He knows how to set this thing up. He can tell by the sound if he's doing the right thing. As soon as there's any difference at all in the sound, his trained ear hears it, and he's up shouting orders to these grease monkeys, right?
Yep.
And they're all risking their lives crawling around on this engine, hoping that someday they can be an engineer.
I yell at the guys at work because I'll hear something. I'm like, what the heck is that? There's a tapping noise. And I work on ICT scanners with the gantry spinning. I'm like, what's going on? I'm like, no, that's okay. Look around. Oh, Rob's over there tapping his pencil with the headphones. I'm like, hey, cut that out. He's like, oh,
You can
sorry.
always tell by the sound if something is right or if it's wrong.
Yep.
If you're tuned
You
in.
get a bearing that goes bad, you can usually hear it. And you tell the
yeah.
guys, you got a bearing going bad. Like, oh, no, you're just hearing things. And then a week later, they're there, the machine's down.
Yep.
So Steve,